we're starting a little later than expected. What time do you want me to start?
1 hour. Too much of it. You may powder my.
Yeah, you too. That's like glare. This year, you balance better this time on the other side.
Then go fix it. This one?
Put it right in front of the post.
Oh, yeah. Much better.
Well, welcome to the Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustee panel discussion. Today is June 23rd here in San Antonio, Texas. My name is Mike Kanufke. I'm the president of the San Antonio Family Association, and we're happy to have with us tonight both yourselves and the live stream that's taking place tonight. So we hope this is beneficial for all. And now we're going into the Northeast Independent School District trustees. I'd like to thank the Burnwood restaurant. It's Burnwood 68 restaurant here on Redland Road between 281 and 1604. And I don't know about you, but I had some brisket. I had a brisket salad that was out of this world. So we want to thank the restaurant here. And I must say it was not easy to accommodate us during COVID, and they were able to pull it off. So thank you again to Burnwood 68. Why don't we open up with a round of applause for the trustee candidates that have shown up, because none of the incumbents decided to show up for whatever reason. So for their courage to be here, let's have a round of applause for all the trustee candidates. It seems like the incumbents couldn't make it for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. But what we have here tonight is our individuals that we'll hear more about, and you'll get a better feel for their situation depending on what district you live in. You might have heard that it was discussed in our last debate that elections have consequences. And I'm here to tell you they really do. And they are trying to fundamentally change and transform our country, our state of Texas, and yes, the county, but even more fundamentally, if you think about it, more directly to your family is the children and their education. Could education be the one place that can reshape the next generation? You know, I remember growing up in the 70s, how we started feeling the more liberal teachers entering, okay, is this the place where we can reverse the effects? And that's something to think about. Northeast Independent School District has been in the past a real flagship for the region, has been. And you'd be surprised today to learn that their ranking has slipped significantly over the last few years or so. Again, because none of the incumbents are here, we can't address those historical trends because we simply don't know that stuff, nor can we address really fiscal questions within the district. But we'll do our very best. The real need to focus is on children. And the crossroads of the public education in Texas is literally at a crossroads where we have charter schools coming into the equation and public schools already there. And the competition is a good thing, generally speaking. It means that a monopoly does not deliver diminishing results like it has in the past. It has to deliver better quality education to our children and be more connected. And so that's what these candidates up here are challenged to do and are prepared to do, and that is meet that challenge. It doesn't make a parent wonder, you know, what school is teaching their kids today. If they go to school and they learn about new history, new government, new forms of government like socialism or communism or egalitarianism or whatever it might be, parents are concerned. What about the basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic? What about the anatomy? Is that gone out the window and now it's all just sex education? Lastly, we should discuss briefly about the size of the Northeast Independent School District. We just had, if you were here, we just had debates on the county. We had debates on the city government. You might be surprised that the city of San Antonio, the annual budget is about $2 billion. Yes, that's with a B, not with an M. Billion, $2 billion per year. What many people are very surprised to learn is that the Northeast Independent School District revenue is a little bit more than half of the whole city of San Antonio. That's incredible. And yet, there are less officials watching that money and making decisions about that money. We must be connected to our independent school districts. So, as mentioned earlier in the evening, I mentioned 4 boxes. I don't know if you were here, but 4 boxes that keep us free in America. Number 1 is the jury box. I think we can all agree that Lady Liberty is blind. The second is the cartridge box, and that is the Second Amendment, that we have to have the ability to grab that ammo out of the cartridge box. The third is the ballot box, where a lot of it really counts. But tonight, we're going to see the candidates on their soapbox so that you're going to be in a better position to pull that lever, make a decision of who best suits you in your situation. Now, there has probably never been a more critical election in our children's history than the one coming up in November for Northeast Independent School District. So let us begin the debate, and I'd like to ask Patrick to come up and please lead us in prayer, which is what we always do in all of our events. Patrick?
Thank you, Michael. If you would, please stand with me. After we finish the prayer, we will sing our national anthem. And so everybody has been given the prayer. If you would, join along. We do this on purpose, so we all are all praying collectively for one intention. So we ask for the one triune God to pour his grace upon us in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, conscious of our sinfulness, but aware that we gather in your name. Come to us, remain with us, and enlighten our hearts. Give us light and strength to know your will, to make it our own, and to live it in our lives. Guide us by your wisdom, support us by your power, for you are God, sharing the glory of Father and Son. You desire justice for all, enable us to uphold the rights of others. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. Unite yourself in the bond of love and keep us faithful to all that is true. As we gather in your name, may we temper justice with love so that all our decisions may be pleasing to you and earn the reward promised to good and faithful servants. We ask this of you who live and reign with the Father and the Son, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you very much. And if you would, please welcome with me Miss Del Gallivan to lead us in the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Dale. That was beautiful. And if you would still stay standing, and we'll do the pledge to the flag of Texas. And it's on the bottom of your prayer sheet if you need help with it. And please join with me. Honor to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. So we'd like to introduce to you the Northeast Independent School District candidates here, and also that I'll let our moderator do that. But I want to introduce our moderator, a parent of the Northeast Independent School District, and comes to us by way of Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, I believe. And we welcome her to Texas. How long ago, Melissa? 2014. So she has been a blessing to the state of Texas, to San Antonio, and to the San Antonio Family Association. And I want to let you know, all you parents and taxpayers, you have a great advocate in doing and helping hold accountable the Northeast Independent School District to do what's right and good, true, good, and beautiful. And so she has a website called NEISD voteforchange.com. I believe that's right. NEISD Vote for Change. That's NEISD as in Northeast Independent School District, voteforchange.com. And you can find lots of great information there. So Melissa and her husband are parishioners at Holy Trinity Catholic Parish and live in, what district do you live in for the school board?
District 6.
District 6. So one of the things you'll learn from each of these candidates is they'll tell you what schools are in their district, so you can get a feel for those districts, because that's crucial to know what's going on. And but Melissa is very well versed in the issues going on within Northeast Independent School District to help hold the school board accountable, the superintendent and administration, and bring to light information that taxpayers deserve to know. So without further ado, please welcome with me Miss Melissa Beckett.
Okay, so for the main event, the four of you that are here, Joe was not able to join us. He is District 4 because of an emergency. We really appreciate that you guys are here, that you've taken your time and your energy to not only show up, but I know you've put a lot of time and effort into just understanding what's going on in our school district. So first, what I'd like to do, and Mike, I'd like to start with you. If you would each give 2 minutes and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and why you're running, and then we'll get into our questions.
Howdy. I'm Mike Osborne, and I'm a candidate for Northeast School Board in District 1. That includes Churchill High School. I'm a native San Antonian, and this community has been my home for 37 years. My daughters excelled in neighborhood schools, and my grandchildren are following in their footsteps. I want that same experience for every family. We opted for Northeast. After a career in electrical engineering, I spent my retirement as a passionate volunteer for numerous organizations. Today, I'm asking the honor of serving our community as your new school board trustee. I will vote to restore accountability, responsibility, and transparency. The school district has a duty to the students and the parents. And this relationship should be a partnership based on trust and verification. I work to ensure Northeast strives to be the best in each and every category and not to lower its academic standards in order to meet goals. I will acknowledge academically strong students while serving the needs of each student. I will work smarter to address your concerns and fulfill my fiduciary responsibilities to facilitate participation from all taxpayers and to prove our schools are an excellent return on your tax dollar investment. I will be supportive and responsive to our community and ensure that we value and retain quality teachers and that you are proud to choose Northeast ISD for your children. I am focused on our children and grandchildren. I care. That's not just a goal, that's my reality. My opponent has been a board member for 20 years. It's time to put an end to failing schools. Please visit votemikeosborne.com for more information and to volunteer for my campaign. I humbly ask again for your consideration and vote on November the 3rd. And whether you're voting in the booth or whether by mail, remember to opt for Osborne. Stay safe out there and God bless you.
Mike, would you just kind of wave to the camera? I guess it's hard for our online viewers to know for sure who's speaking. So when you do speak, raise your hand so they know and can connect to your face. Go ahead, Ione.
Hi, my name is Ione McGinty, and I'm running for the Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustees for District 3. And you pronounce my name Ione, like I own a car. And my goal is to advocate for the students, the parents, and the taxpayers. I'd like to tell you a little bit about why I'm running and about myself. Last year, our church partnered with Larkspur Elementary to provide free tutoring to any student that desired it. Twice a month, we transformed our gym at the church into a learning center. And seeing the positive impact that had on those students is what has propelled me to run. I love my community. I am a product of NEISD schools. I went to Jackson Keller Elementary School, Nimitz Middle School, and Robert E. Lee High School. I currently live in the house that I grew up in. I've been there for the past 25 years. I've been married to my husband for 37 years. We have 6 children together, including one with special needs. I have been a lifelong educator. I have started teaching tennis when I was 16, and I have home educated my children for the past 29 years. I have done it all. I've been the cafeteria manager. I've been the janitor. I've been teaching history, physical education, and I value education so much that I actually went back to school this past fall at SAC to finish my degree in kinesiology. Before I started my family, I worked 10 years in the banking industry, and I learned a lot about accountability and dual control. I want to be your voice for common sense, and I would appreciate your support for Northeast Independent School District, Board of Trustees, District 3. You can go to my website, voteforione.com. That's voteforione, IONE.com. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Cimarron Gilson, and if I was in your district, I'd vote for you, and Mike, I'd opt for Osborne. I'm Cimarron Gilson again, and I'm running for District 5, which covers the Johnson, MacArthur, and Madison clusters of schools. If you go to my Facebook page, @Gilson for NEISD 5, you'll see a map of District 5 and all the different schools that the district covers. So you'll know if you're in my district. My wife, Mallory, a MacArthur graduate, and I have 2 small children and 1 more on the way come December. They're too little to be. Henry is 1 year and Claire is almost 3. I'm the youngest myself of 7 boys. My oldest brother and I are the first college graduates in over 4 generations of my family. That means we're the first college graduates, period. He's the first doctor. I'm the first lawyer. I run my own practice in estate planning and probate. I've been doing that for the last 8 years. And 4 years ago, I helped my mom, who was then 74 years old, who picked cotton as a child in the Valley in Texas, go to the RNC, the GOP National Convention, and elect Trump as a Trump delegate. So, at a time like now where there's so much turmoil in our country, it's good to remember that only in this country can a woman like my mom go from picking cotton in the hot fields of Texas to picking the president of the United States. Because of my parents, I know the value of hard work and a great education. And while Northeast has a lot to be proud of, this current Board of Trustees has actually failed the public in some serious ways by their votes and decisions, and that's why I'm running. A lot of those decisions for why I'm running are on my website, gilsonforneisd.com. And if you got one of these yellow cards, you can see a couple reasons on that. So I invite you to check that out, the website and the Facebook page. The simple summary is my opponent and the current board have lost touch with the conservative values of District 5. Will you help, and everybody online, will you help restore the public trust in District 5 and on the Board of Trustees at NEISD? I hope you do. We need your help. I need your money, I need your time, and I need your vote. Remember, if we all pitch in together on November 3rd, go with Gilson, and we will make our school board great again.
All right, I'm not sure how I'm going to do following that. All three of y'all done great. I'm Steve Hilliard. I live in District 6, which is basically the Reagan cluster. North of 1604 and west of 281 is the area that I represent. I attended Northeast schools myself. I went to Roosevelt High School a long time ago. And after retiring from the Air Force career, my wife and I decided to move back to San Antonio because we were both, she's also a Northeast grad. She went to Roosevelt as well. We decided to move back here so our children could have those same great educational opportunities when we came home. But I'm not a politician, so why am I running? Had you told me 6 months ago I'd be sitting here right now doing this live stream, I would have thought you were crazy. Okay, sorry, I need to be louder. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good participation from the audience. So why did I put my hat in the ring? It's a real question. Simple. I want to be a voice for the children, the parents, and teachers. There's a lot of great things about Northeast, but I also recognize there's some areas for serious improvement, and the trustees have the ability to impact the direction of the district. So that's part of what we want to do. My question to you is, have you seen areas of concern? Is it college readiness? How's discipline on campus? Is there something else? There's lots of questions. Each time I talk to different members of the community, I hear different concerns being expressed, but you don't see action necessarily at the high levels already being acknowledged by the district, which prides itself on transparency and wants to make sure that, as it was stated back in February, if there's a problem, they'll acknowledge it and fix it. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of acknowledgement lately going on. The bottom line is, I'll ask the hard questions. As a squadron commander in the Air Force, I had to get to the heart of the issues. And you had to do that by asking the hard questions. It was to make sure that you had good information to make sound, principled decisions that are consistently applied across various situations. The three things in my campaign that you heard me say earlier is the children, parents, and teachers. The children, it's the reason we have these public schools. It's the whole reason the public school system exists. Parents, they are the primary educators of our kids. That's a simple fact. They're the first educators. They have rights and responsibilities, and it's not just joining the PTA and helping with homework. There's actually Texas Education Code that talks about parents' rights and responsibilities, chapter 26, chapter 4, if you're really interested or want to go to sleep sometime. But it's important that you know those rights and responsibilities. And lastly, the teachers. They're the touch points with our kids day in and day out. They know what each individual student needs. We need to ensure they have the right resources, and not just the finances, but also the policies that ensure that they have a good learning environment in the classroom. If you have all of those, then we'll have the best outcome for each student given their ability. And that's the goal. Over all of this, of course, is financial responsibilities, because every person is a taxpayer. We need to spend the money as though we're spending money out of mine in your wallet. That's literally what is happening. As earlier mentioned, the budget for next year is about $564 million. So we need to ensure that there's good accountability as different funding mechanisms come up for votes. I've got more to say, but I know my time is limited. So if you go to my website, stevefortrustee.com, stevefortrustee.com. You'll see why I'm running and what I think I can provide if I was elected to the school board on November 3rd, District 6, the Reagan cluster. Thank you.
Thank you guys very, very much. I appreciate all the thought that went into those wonderful statements and the heart behind all of them. We're going to have a couple different formats. Excuse me. There'll be times where I will call on you directly, something specific that maybe you have on your website that I'd like you to expand on. And then there'll be times I'll ask a more general question where I might direct the initial question to one person, but then other people, if you have something to say about that, feel free to say, raise my hand. I want to go next. Okay. So this first question I'm going to pose to Mike. What do you believe are the board's roles and responsibilities?
We have a legal role to hire the superintendent and to oversee the superintendent. We have fiduciary role to the taxpayers to make sure that their money is spent wisely. And we have another fiduciary responsibility to the parents to make sure that their children are educated. St. Thomas More said that the major problem we have, that was 450 years ago. He said the major problem that we have is there's a whole lot of learning going on, and that's my Texas twang to it. There's a whole lot of learning going on and too few education, too little education. So we want to make sure that our children are prepared to go out into the world to whatever they choose to be.
Excellent. Thank you. And remember to raise your hand when you're talking so that they know who you are. As a follow-up to that, Ione, if elected as a Northeast ISD Board of Trustee, who will you be representing? Who are you responsible to?
Okay, my number one responsibility is to the taxpayers to make sure that they are getting a good return on their investment. That means providing quality education to the students and hiring good teachers and taking care of those teachers. And to me, the students and the teachers are more important than the buildings. So that's where I stand, that we have to take care of our personnel. We are accountable to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Cimarron, who determines the goals and direction of the school district?
The goals and the direction of the school district are determined by the Board of Trustees.
Okay, very good.
7 members occupy the Board of Trustees here at Northeast, and they determine vision, policy, goals, curriculum, employment decisions, budget items, a whole host of goals and direction.
Okay, excellent. As a follow-up to that, I guess, Steve, the current board does a significant amount. Matter of fact, that seems like that's all they've been doing. And I know they're not here to answer to this, but the last, since 2015, December 2015, they have voted unanimously, more than 600 votes in a row. And they appear to just rubber stamp the suggestions from the district. How is that different from what Cimarron just described as who sets the goals and direction?
That's rubber stamping is the term that is commonly heard. It's not well liked among some people, but I love my wife. We live in the same house and we don't agree 100% of the time, any given day normally. This goes back to asking the hard questions. That's one of the things that I would like to do to make sure we have an understanding of it's not just the district proposes, the trustees approve. There should be, and I'm surprised there's not, disagreement and more items pulled or tabled till there's better information and the professional staff can come back. It seems like things are done very quickly. Obviously, we don't have all the inside information. We don't get all the agenda packets. So there are things that none of us know what it's like to be an actual trustee. But at the same time I think a more vigorous debate would be important. And I'm surprised that it's always a unanimous vote. It's concerning to me. And that's one of the things that has been noticed over the last several years.
Okay, great. Back to Cimarron. We're going to go kind of back this direction. Related to vigorous debate, there have been some comments made that the unanimous voting is a good thing because that means there's good teamwork. Do you really want people up there like fighting with each other? Can you maybe bring a little bit of light as to how you would have a vigorous debate and still be respectful and bring the kind concerns of the community to the table?
Sure. What are the concerns of the community? So we each have to be open to hearing that and receiving that and keeping lines of communication open. So whether it's our phone number, our email, our website, our Facebook, how we receive that information from the public is important and should be open. And getting the point, what was the rest of your question? Remind me that, please.
How do you have a lively debate, let's say with Steve and anybody else here that's on the board, and still be respectful and not have a fight, as some people might imply that would be distasteful?
Just basically being a grown-up person, being a responsible adult, being respectful in how you address one another, does not mean, as was told to us at our orientation meeting in February, that we have to check all our religious beliefs and personal beliefs at the door if we ever become elected. That's not what the public expects, and that's not certainly what I believe in. We can have a debate about our beliefs for the school board, for the district, but we can do that civilly and respectfully without vandalizing and tearing people down and sit-ins and all of that. I think we can do that in our district, and we should.
Okay, great. Steve has a follow-up. Yeah.
Great answer, Sam. I think it's important too, we need to model for the people in our district and our children that you can disagree, but do it agreeably. We may have completely different viewpoints, but I listen and it goes back and forth. But we have to model that behavior. It's not just you're wrong because you disagree with me. Once again, my beautiful wife, I don't always agree with her and vice versa, but we have good conversations. And that's part of the learning and growing environment, and how we model for our children and our community members how we should act so that our society continues to grow and mature in the right ways.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Paul is sitting right behind me, but every time Steve does that, he points at me. No. I just had to lighten things a little bit.
Can I add
Okay.
something to that?
Yes.
So you just heard what I believe, and I want you to know about me personally. Like growing up, attending University of Notre Dame, most of my friends did not believe in what I believed in. They didn't believe in God, perhaps, or they didn't believe conservative values politically, perhaps. But we were friends, and we could be friends. And I think that will show you and the voter that I don't have to agree with everything you believe in, but we can be friends, and we can be respectful, and we can be San Antonians and Texans and community members together.
Excellent. Okay, Ione and Mike, do you have anything to add? If you don't, that's okay.
Yes, I would like to add something. We had a questionnaire about how we would handle disagreements and getting along with others. And all I can say is I've been married for 37 years, and I have 6 children that have been with me 24/7. I have had to learn conflict resolution. I'm always complimented on my patience when I'm somewhere. You have to be patient. I have 6 different learning styles. So I can get along with other people. Yes, and of course, all 6 of my children are different. They have different likes and talents. And so, but we all bring different ideas. And one blessing right now is just seeing my older children carry on discussions with my husband about different things. And it's beautiful that they've learned that. And also being with, my children 24/7, I've been held accountable. I have to have good, respectful behavior and model that, because that's how I want them to treat others. And I know that they're going to learn from examples.
Excellent. Raise your hand.
Repeat the question.
We were talking about how the board currently votes everything unanimous, and a lot of people think that's a sign of good teamwork. And we're talking about how can you, what would you bring to a respectful conversation that wouldn't have to result in a unanimous vote?
Right. I think your question is, how do you resolve conflict without being conflicting? Mm-hmm. And you do that, that's a choice. Out here in society right now, people are making bad choices. And the rest of society is sitting around and having to live with those things. So you listen patiently. You don't interrupt. You let each person, you in fact invite differences of opinion so that you can learn, so that you can grow, so that you can do what the residents of the district want, what the parents want, not your political agenda that you bring to the table. That doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion, but if you don't bring an informed opinion, then you're an automaton. You're artificial intelligence or artificial unintelligence. So I would say that the fact that there is no difference of opinion means, to me, tells me that things have been taken care of outside of the boardroom, not being transparent. So that's a big flag to me.
Okay, excellent. We are going to talk about transparency. Go ahead. Let's go back to Steve. When gathering information to inform a board decision, how will you weigh the opinions of students, parents, district employees, and teachers?
I think it's important to take everybody's input. When it comes to the students or the children, you do have to understand they don't have some of the life experience you do. So like most things, grain of salt, but part of a trustee, I think a key part is listening and engaging. I would advocate for, strongly encourage having listening tours on each of the different campuses in the respective cluster. For my example, District 6, I would like to talk to the administrators. What's working well? What's not working well? What are your strong points that the district helps you with? What policies the districts makes your job at the campus level harder? How are we going to, if we're elected as trustees, make those impacts? Because we do curriculum and the policies, that's kind of where they're in the tax rate. But if we're going to do that, we need to know what policies we need to evaluate. And then we need to take input from the different sources. We still need to be principled of who we are and recognize that we represent not just our own opinion, but all of the residents of our communities that possibly vote us in. And even the people that don't vote us in. Everybody, we represent that community of our cluster.
Okay, excellent. Okay, no raised hands. Okay, so next we're going to move on to some targeted questions, specifically based on information I gathered either from your Facebook page or your website. So Mike, we're going to start with you. You mentioned on your website that the district should not be afraid of charter schools. Over the past several years, Northeast ISD has been losing students to charter schools. As a response, Northeast ISD wants to limit charter schools. How would you recommend the district respond to the loss of students to charter schools?
The parents, right now in Northeast, we have 2 schools that have been designated failing, a grade of F, by the Texas Education Agency. TEA is the QA, the Quality Assurance State Agency up on the Colorado, Babylon on the Colorado in Austin. We need to be taking care of business down here. We need to be doing quality control. You've got the Deming principle that he transformed the economy of Japan in the 50s. That's with the CPI, continuous process improvement. That means that you don't wait for some outsider to come in. I don't know what kind of a system that they have. Colleges, when they go for accreditation, they have a self-study. We ought to be having a continuous self-study. We've got an administration that is at least as many teachers managing things somehow or other. And if they're in charge of reviewing, somebody ought to be in charge of reviewing things so that, the teacher in the classroom is continually checking her students and adjusting her curriculum based on whether the students are learning it, the individual learning styles of each student. We've got different categories of schools, elementary, middle, and high, but within those different 7 districts that we have in Northeast, we have a different makeup of individuals, of students. And each teacher in the classroom is teaching 20 or 30 individuals. They're individuals. And so she has to, if given the freedom, she then adjusts her instruction so that nobody is left behind.
So you're saying that your answer to the charter school question is to give teachers more authority to make adjustments to individual students. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that if you have a product in the grocery store that doesn't suit your taste, then you're going to switch and buy something else. You may even pay more for the alternate, but you're not going to stick around eating something that you're choking on or that your children are choking on. Your children are the most important thing to you. You don't want to send them to a failing school, especially elementary. Starting out, what's going to happen when they get to middle school? And they're in there with students that are excelling. They're going to always be in remedial.
Thank you. Related to that, there's a question of vouchers. Does anybody want to take on the voucher question, Sim?
Sure. Vouchers is a touchy subject. I think vouchers have been a goal for many people for a great number of years. And just this past week, I believe Vice President Pence was with Secretary DeVos in Wisconsin talking about the Wisconsin school voucher program, Wisconsin Choice. And I was learning a lot from that. And I do think, one thing I learned from that was that the choice students, the ones that went to a school with a voucher, were saving the state about 30 to 40% of the money per student and having it at the same or better output academically. So I think from an economic perspective, vouchers can save our district a lot of money. That might go a long way into reducing property taxes, which everybody would like to see. But I think that the essence really of choice is to help children get out of failing schools or get into a school that your parents believe will teach you the values or the faith that they want you to learn. And unfortunately, our public schools don't do that. There's no prayer, there's no 10 Commandments, there's no Bible, there's none of that for a long time. So the alternative for many folks of faith is a private school or a charter school that will teach character and history. And so I think vouchers are important. And I think, we don't have them today, but I think it would be a good solution to some of these problems that our district faces, that parents face.
Okay, great. A follow-up question to that. Currently, our district spends money on an organization called TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, and they asked TASB to advocate for things. And so, for example, they asked TASB recently at a June 8th meeting, they passed a resolution to ask TASB to advocate for stricter requirements for charter schools and to charter schools and to limit charter schools because it's too much competition for the district and it takes money away from the district. Sending money to an organization like that, for example, my money, your money, going to that organization effectively to take away my choice as a parent doesn't sit very well with me. Would you be in support, and anyone can take on this, I guess, would you be in support of looking at TASB and what the money that goes there and what they advocate for the school?
Steve here, District 6. Always follow the money. At the end of the day is you got to follow the money. And I was at that meeting on June 8th as well, and the legislative agenda, a variety of things. So I would also like to ask who in the district comes up with the legislative agenda. And then more importantly is, did the trustees go out as well and kind of bounce it off the community members? Because I don't know what type of feedback the current trustees are or not receiving from the community members they represent. Because ultimately they're authorizing approval of that legislative agenda, taxpayer money to go now to TASB to support. So those are questions that need to be asked. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but we need to look at what's coming out of TASB. They do certain good things with the co-op buying and other things, but there's other stuff I question about where it's cut and paste from TASB for policies and procedures. So we're an independent school district. Our community values are different than Austin ISD or something in Houston or Dallas or Amarillo or El Paso for that matter. So we need to ask those hard questions. We need to follow the money.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was a great follow-up. Ione, you are a lifelong Northeast ISD resident. You have deep and wide ties to the community. How do you think Northeast ISD could foster more of a partnership with the community?
Oh, that question is one of my passions. Like I had said earlier, I live in the house I grew up in, and I went to Robert E. Lee High School, which was walking distance from my house. And one of the greatest things was I was able to walk to the school and play tennis. During the summer there at Robert E. Lee, we had what was called the summer recreation program, where the gyms were open. We had access to water, the tennis courts, and there was such a community feel. I cannot tell you how much having access to those tennis courts made an impact on my life. And it wasn't just playing a sport. It gave me an outlet. I used to be a very shy person, and it forced me to initiate conversations with people, all different kinds of people. Most of them were older than me. I even played with an NFL football player one time. And, but also there was the parents of some of our students would be there. And one man in particular, Mr. Pugsley, has been on my mind a lot. But I always felt watched over and cared for because there was a sense of community. My dad would take us to the track and we would run around the track. I believe that the school board, through policies, has disconnected the community from the school. And that includes having everything locked up. I have not had access to the tennis courts at Robert E. Lee High School since I moved back into the district for 25 years. I was given excuse after excuse. And recently I did get some headway with Nimitz Middle School, but I believe these are facilities the taxpayers have paid for. And there's no reason for them to be locked up. I was given the excuse of vandalism. That's what they always say. But yet Northeast has a police department, which we did not have growing up. And they also have closed cameras, security cameras on the courts. And what makes me sad is that there are children out there that are wanting an outlet and they don't have it. They can't go play tennis with their parents or with their friends or go play basketball or go run on the track. And I recently met Lee High School football players that had no access to the football field. And that's not right. So I believe the community has been shut off from the school. And, you know, that does not foster a good situation.
Excellent. That's a very good explanation. Thank you. All right, Cimarron. Lee High School isn't in your NEISD district. You are running for, in the district that you're running for, but you mentioned that the vote to change the name of Robert E. Lee High School to the Legacy of Educational Excellence High School is one of the reasons that you're running for school board, and that that decision doesn't represent the views of our community. Can you explain what you mean by that and how you will approach a similar situation if brought to the board during your term?
Yes, Simran. Robert E. Lee High School, the decision to change the name back in 2017. So that again is another sensitive topic, especially in today's climate. But there's two reasons that we should be alarmed at our current board of trustees, or at least the ones who voted in 2017 for that decision. One is that I don't think many people know that in 2015, 2 years prior, that same question came in front of the board, and the public had a chance to go to the board meetings, submit comments, and make their voices known. And from my reading of the newspaper articles and the history, two-thirds of the community opposed changing the name. And so in 2015, the board voted 5-2 to keep the name. They heard the will of the majority of the community, and they respected that. 2 years later, without that same procedure, due process you may call it, where the people could come and speak, the board voted 7-0 to change the name. And then there was a whole circus of the suggested names on what the school might be called. And they ended up with Lee. And they had to spend $300,000 of taxpayer money to rebrand the high school. So one problem I have with that is the majority. People speak and their voices were ignored. That's a problem on any body, any governance body of any organization. And if you're not going to listen to the people who put you into office, you need to retire, you need to go. And that's why NEISD vote for change is important. We have to change the current board. But there's a second reason, and this gets to the real heart of the matter of addressing race, the meaning of the name, the history of Robert E. Lee, how it affects people in the community. I don't believe that changing the name really changed any hearts on the matter of race relation. I don't think it taught our children anything good. What it did teach our children was that if you make a loud enough noise and threaten to have a sit-in and maybe do some violence, the adults in the room will capitulate and give in. And that's what we're seeing all across the country the last few weeks, is violence to get something changed. I think we're better than that as a nation, as a community, as a democracy, and we're supposed to be civil in our discussion. But I did some research. MacArthur opposed integration of the U.S. Army. Madison owned slaves and authored the 3/5 Compromise in the Constitution. LBJ Johnson was a staunch racist who used the N-word all the time, even in reference to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We have 3 schools in my District 5 who bear the name of people who have problems with race. Have we changed the names of those schools? I don't think we should, but why did we go after Robert E. Lee High School and leave all the other schools alone? We can find good and bad in every human character through history, and we shouldn't be teaching our kids to focus on the negative and the bad of somebody, ignoring the good in somebody. So I learned something about Robert E. Lee. After the war, he opposed the idea of putting up statues and memorials throughout the South. He encouraged his Southern brethren to heal from the wounds of war, and he thought the statues would prolong that healing period. He had opposed secession to begin with, but everywhere he went, he encouraged the Southern people to be united again with the Union, to support Reconstruction, to not rise up again in arms. He went on to be the president of Washington University, or now Washington and Lee University. He led West Point. He supported free public schools for Black children. You know, and people loved him in the South for his character, his sense of duty and honor to defend his state. And I think there's a lot about there's a lot about Robert Lee that we can be proud of than the aspects that a lot of folks in that time period we now know were wrong. They were wrong to maintain slavery and to be racist. But I don't think we taught our kids anything by removing a name, and I don't think we made a lot of people happy about that. I don't think it changed people's lives to change the name. And then ironically, we still have Lee on the front walls of the high school. What I'd like to see is a civil discussion. If this kind of topic comes up again, I'd like to see a civil discussion, one where we learn about the character or the memorial or the name, learn about it, all about it, and then make a decision, not based on violence or threat of violence, but make a decision and let the will of the majority rule. If the majority is not there yet, keep working at it. Keep working at the hearts and minds. And in time, the community will grow and learn, or it will heal and redeem itself. So I think that's what we need to do next time there's some politically correct charged question. We need to approach it that way, not the way that our board did it.
And actually, just as a note, that vote you talked about in 2015, the last vote where they were not unanimous on everything was that vote where they voted 5-2 to keep and that was also the last time they allowed significant public comment on anything. Ione.
I'd like to follow up on this as an alumni of Robert E. Lee High School, having spoken out in 2017 at board meetings against the name change. Taxpayers were not for the name change. And it led me to be gravely concerned about what students are learning or not learning at the level. As Cimarron said, Robert E. Lee was very well respected amongst both sides for his character, and that he did not want to go to war at all. And he was stationed here in San Antonio at the time, and it was written that tears came down his face because he knew what that meant. Robert E. Lee was always opposed to slavery. He actually wrote letters to Lincoln appealing for the abolishment of slavery, and he actually called slavery a sin. And his wife taught blacks to read which was against the law at the time. So I feel that the school district has done a poor job of teaching character and teaching American history, that they could find fault with such a man that was revered by both sides. And it was a total waste of money. And my comment at the board meeting was that you never bend over for a bully, because they will climb on your back. And if you look at what's going on in our nation right now, it's despicable. And it's, like I said, it led me to be gravely concerned about what is actually being taught in schools these days. Thank you, Cimarron, for your remarks.
Thank you. Very good. Steve, this is an easy one. In one of your blog posts, you said, "I deliberately try to use the term children rather than students or pupils. Ask me why." Can you please explain?
Yes, gladly. Thank you. Robert, Steve Hilliard on the ballot, District 6, by the way. I had to sign up for it. Robert's my government name, I call it. There are children. They're not students and pupils. At the end of the day, it goes back to my other point about parents. We're the primary educators. There are children. We are entrusting our children to the school district, a public trust institution. But the primary responsibility and authority starts with the parents. So they are my child. I send my 2 children to Northeast ISD schools. Each of you that has a child, choose to send them to that school. At the end of the day, they come home to your house, under your roof, your family values your guidance, you nurture and educate them. The school district is there to help supplement and add to it. And we do that through our tax dollars and what we, the trustees, representing the community values, guide the superintendent and their staff to do. That's all part of what it says right here. They were talking about, I love this. Trustees, as the district's elected leaders, represent community expectations as they chart the direction of educational programs and services and establish a standard by which success is measured. And how do I, as a parent, measure the success for my child? Are they becoming the best they can be for their individual God-given talents? Each child is different. But at the end of the day, there are children. They're not wards of the state or wards of the district. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for explaining that. All right, so before we started, everyone got a page with 3 charts on it. Mike, I'm going to go with you first, so I'm giving you fair warning. But I'm going to explain those charts just real quick. Basically, what I did was I took the STAR data from the TEA, and I took Northeast ISD's collective scores for high school, middle school, and elementary provided by the TEA, and compared them to the state average. So, for example, the first chart you're looking at says Northeast ISD high schools, the district versus the state. So in 2006 and 2007, Northeast ISD was scoring 9 points above the state average in all of the cumulative subjects. The most recent, 18-19, only 3 points above the state average. And no, the state average has not increased. So, question for Mike. When you arrive, sorry, that I already told you about that. You will notice that this objective data shows Northeast ISD's student performance has been steadily declining relative to the rest of the state since at least 2006. Had you seen this data before is the first question, and how would you as a board member address this issue?
No, I hadn't seen it before. And when I first looked at it, I said, well, you've got it charted, the district versus the state, but there's only one graph. And you said, oh, that's the difference. And then I thought about it and I said, well, but if that's the difference, you just said that it was declining. It's converging.
Yeah.
Now, if the state isn't increasing, then the convergence is bad. If the state average is increasing, then the convergence is okay. So I'd ask for more data from my superintendent and his staff. We talked about this, and you said, okay, yeah.
I'll get you more data.
But
that's the right, yeah.
So you look and you analyze the graph, you analyze the data, and you ask questions, and you find out what is the information that you're being fed, so that you can then make an informed decision.
Excellent. Okay, Ione. Do you believe there are systemic problems in our education system concerning special education? I know you have a special needs child. If so, what do you propose as far as changes that can be made to further provide a foundation for families with children who have special needs children?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do. Based upon the comments of the parents of other children, and more importantly, my son has a case manager, and he also has therapists. Those therapists, every one of his speech, occupational, and physical therapists have told me that I did the best thing for my son by home educating him. And also his case manager, she tells me, you know, how far my son has excelled. I have heard horror stories from other parents when I have done advocacy work. And, you know, when I have attended board meetings, I was really shocked that they seemed more in tune with spending money on buildings than on education. To see this graph, it's shocking. I mean, what are they doing with all of our money besides building buildings? I know on the Lee campus, they are just about finished with a $36 million fine arts center. Now, as a taxpayer, I look at that and I think, how does that equate to jobs? So I do know in the district for special needs children, after they've gone through 12 years of the curriculum, that there is another school they can go to prepare them for a job. I'm common sense. If that child can't graduate at 18 and be ready for a job, there is something wrong. The taxpayer should not have to pay for 4 more years. How did I do this? Very easily. I treated my son like my other kids. Sure, maybe what took my kids 5 times to learn has taken my special needs child 100. But it takes patience. It takes one-on-one. He can't be just shoved through, like a cattle going through a barn. But my son, this is an example. He's 18. He was shopping at the local grocery store with my dad, with his grandfather. A lady was there from the school district teaching kids that were older than him how to work in an environment. And she was shocked that my son was so well behaved and could follow orders. But like I said, it's just common sense. That's what you need. And it's not that difficult. You do not take a special needs child and put him in a separate room or lock him in a closet, which has happened. And I can tell you that because I have been in a state representative's office with the grandmother of a child that this happened to. That's unacceptable. They are human beings. And like I said, it's not that hard. This past year at SAC, I actually took a class on teaching kids with special needs. And I was even surprised the professor did not know of some of the organizations that I knew of. And it comes back to advocating. If you don't find an answer, you keep digging and you can find it. And like I said, if I can teach my son to read, it was not difficult. It's phonics, it's basic, it's common sense. It doesn't cost millions of dollars. So I would bring in people who know things. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Cimarron, school districts have access to a lot of parent and student data. What role should the Board of Trustees play in making sure that parent and student data is protected? And I would imply with that question that it is not currently protected.
Yeah, well, Cimarron, District 5, go with Gilson. No, HIPAA, you're talking about HIPAA?
No.
No, school data,
School
academics?
data, like,
I'm going to pass on that question. Let somebody else answer that.
Okay.
'Cause
I have, at varying levels, students, SAT scores are being sent to colleges without parents and students knowing that they're being sent. The school takes it upon themselves to make decisions about where our child's data goes rather than respecting that the parent or the child need to be making that decision. That's just one of many examples. Okay.
I'm gonna pass the question to a parent who has kids in the school system and maybe more familiar with that. My kids are 1 and 2.5, and I haven't had to deal with that yet.
It's coming. Great question, especially because we went to a lot of online learning, right?
Yes.
During this COVID response. And we got the FERPA data, which those that are familiar, I've learned what it was, didn't know what it was, but realized it goes back to follow the money. If we're getting free access and services, every time my kid has to log into their Google account, where's that data going? What agreements has the district made, and where did the money come from, and what was part of those agreements? Because we have the right to know where all of our student data is going. And once again, they're minors. Their information and data should not go out with explicit parental consent of knowing where that data mining is going in big tech, and they are looking for data. Yeah. There is no doubt about that. So I would offer is follow the money when we start getting free or reduced services, because what is that exchange? And that's a question that needs to be asked when we sign contracts or agreements, especially with IT becoming more and more and more prevalent in our children's life in the educational marketplace.
My observation has been that those types of decisions, accepting things for free, don't necessarily currently end up in front of the board. So what board policy might need to be changed to make sure that district employees aren't accepting free goods without going through the proper channels of making sure things are protected? Is that something the board has authority to do?
Probably need more information to give an articulate answer, but obviously there are those statutory roles, the 4 that are defined, and that the superintendent does day-to-day operations. He has the responsibility to ensure that all of his subordinate employees are operating within compliance with state law, federal law, contract contracting law, and all their fiduciary responsibilities. So without having more information, I don't be able to answer, but no, if there's nepotism or any sort of other type of agreements in place, give and take, questions should be asked, and we should try to find where this information and data is going, especially if it's our minor children in particular. That's a huge concern.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know that was a tough question, and not something a lot of people have thought about. Okay, so Steve, I'm going to skip your question because you answered that one. Okay, Simran, how about this one? The Board of Trustees and the Superintendent talk about the importance of transparency. Do you think the current board is transparent? Can you give us examples of how you would increase transparency?
I don't think the Cimarron District 5, I don't think the current board is being as transparent as it can be or as it should be. I've seen some of their meetings and how they take votes on a motion or an issue. And I see, I mean, they're supposed to be governed by the Open Meetings Act. So where the public can see everything that's being discussed by our representatives. And what I see regularly is all those in favor say aye, and all 7 of them will say aye or nay. Let's say aye. Okay, now all opposed say nay. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries. That's how much time the naysayers are given. And I wonder, how does my opponent, the president of the board, every time she calls the question, how does she know that there are no opposition votes? Unless they have been in contact with each other outside of an open meeting.
Yep. Which
So-
would be a violation of the Open Meetings
Right.
Act, which is
So-
exactly right.
I know that there's an idea to work as one team of 8. That's an ethos that's taught, I think, through TASB. But that's not what our voters expect. That's not what I expect as a taxpayer. You know, I want my voice heard, and I want to see the discussion and the diversity of thought. It ain't happening.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've had some teachers that have brought up some issues and said that when I get kids in high school and I'm teaching them history, they don't know how to read. And I've been encouraged to not fail them in my history class because that results in too high of a failure rate. How is that harming our children? And I will give this question to Mike.
Hello. So in history class, they're not able to read about the history. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's okay if you have a didactic learning process where the teacher gets up there and just reads from the book to them. But if you have a pedagogical learning process, then you have interactions with the students. There's 5 different types of pedagogical learning. And that's where an interactive system, instead of you just putting something out there and hope they soak it up, you're involved with the student. You're doing testing, you're doing homework. And if they were teaching phonics, I learned phonics in the 2nd grade from Mrs. Kremenek. Mrs. Kremenek had a child, a daughter with Down's syndrome. My first exposure to that. Mrs. Kremenek was the most loving teacher, patient teacher. And she taught me phonics. So adults would come to me and say, well, Michael, how do you say this word? Well, you just sound it out. In the 90s, no, excuse me, I guess in the 80s, the elementary school decided in Northeast that they weren't going to teach phonics. How can you learn how to read if you don't teach phonics? So is it any wonder that you end up with a student that then can't learn history? And that then, I guess, then they're going to not find out about President Lee, about General Lee, about President Washington, Madison, Jefferson, Roosevelt, They want to take down his statue in front of the Museum of Natural History in New York City. He was their mayor, he was governor, then he was president. He started our national park system. But he's got some warts, like all of us frogs. And so they don't like certain things about him. I went and looked up the history of the statue. The Museum of Natural History they started talking about it in 1920. Roosevelt's dad was one of the founders. But the architect talked about his vision for the statue. And then it talked about the artist that they got to actually do the statue. And their ideas about that statue have been corrupted by people because there's a person out of Africa. The black man represents Africa, doesn't represent a slave. It represents one of the people that have immigrated and made our nation what it is. You have the American Indian, to honor the American Indian. So those were symbols of heroic figures. And they've taken that and denigrated it because you have a white, racist, eugenicist president up there that is one of the reasons that we have the nation that we have now, that we're not a third world country. We don't have people trying to break down our doors to get in from our southern borders. And I don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you.
It did. If you can't read, you can't learn your history.
Yep. That's exactly right. Okay, so Ione. NEISD over the last several years has gone digital for most textbooks at all grade levels. There are several studies that show students experience better comprehension when reading from a traditional textbook. What is your opinion about digital textbooks versus traditional textbooks, and how should the Board of Trustees address this issue?
All right. Well, I prefer traditional books. Digital, I do not like. And I'll give two reasons. Number one, I have one son who had a concussion, and reading things on the computer gives him a headache and it hurts his eyes. I feel that's just not a natural way. I'm concerned about a lot of health effects of that. Being a home educator, we had to live on a very tight budget, very tight. We were willing to make that sacrifice because the education of our children was very important. One thing we did was we went to garage sales and we bought old books. Books that were written in the 1940s and the 1960s. And I found that those books were more accurate on history. That is how I taught my special needs son to read. Was through, we bought a set of books on presidents for 25 cents each. But I can tell you, he learned about Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Robert E. Lee. And I feel the quality of education is not as good digitally. I would not trust that.
Steve, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, can I follow up? Generally speaking, I personally prefer the traditional paper versus electronics, but having said that, is we represent all the constituents, so what we go and get them. But recognize, as the district did recently at a board meeting, that there are many kids in our district who don't have access to technology. They don't have a tablet. I know Northside, when they issue their tablets and hotspots, But the proposal, if I understood it correctly at the recent board meeting, was they put Wi-Fi at all the schools so parents could bring their children to download the packets versus paper packets, even not even school books, but paper versus electronic. But we need to look at all the cost benefits. There is a health concern. Our kids already spend a lot of time on electronics. Do we want them doing that or experiencing the natural world? There's different types of learning, as Mr. Osborne acknowledged. Some people need that. Some people love the swipe, swipe, swipe. It makes it more portable if you're going to have an electronic education. And Johnny and Sally can't say I left my book at school. Now you also have to follow the money. What is the cost differential of having all one, all the other, the balancing act? There's lots of things. But it's one of those things where we need to have the conversation, dialogue, and figure out what the best is from the teacher perspective, the parent perspective, and the students, and then ultimately the cost of the district because of the taxpayers. So that's not a different take, but
Yeah. No,
good
that's
question.
really good. What about the issue of parents not being able to see what their children are? If my child has a history textbook and I say, hey, would you bring that home? I'm going to flip through, the Civil War and I'm going to check a few things. And okay, I like what you're learning here. I don't have any worries. My children who have been in history and have not had textbooks, I don't have the ability to do that. They're doing their work in the classroom and I don't have access to a textbook online. I literally would have to go meet with the teacher and find out what she's pulling off the internet to teach to my children.
yes, and that's a concern. Chapter 26, this is one of the ones I've learned over the last couple of months about access, parental rights and responsibilities. And one of those is to all teaching materials. Now, the district has different ways they can offer that, but that is something that maybe the trustees would say we will always have at least one paper copy available at each campus so that if a parent comes, they can get it to in a reasonable way. But sometimes I think those are things we need to consider. Is there a new approach or a better approach? Because at the end of the day, as the parents or the primary educators, and you need to know what your child is being taught. And if you have questions, then you can go back to there. Because once again, the supplemental education is coming from the district. We have to remember that. It doesn't always sound good when you say that, but we're the primary educators. And so we need to have access to all those materials. Records, assessments, and teaching materials are just a couple of the things of chapter 26, which is an interesting read if you have some time.
Okay.
Texas Education Guide.
Excellent. Okay, so this one I would like all of you to answer. And so I will let whoever would like to go first can just raise their hand. And if no one raised their hand, I'll just call on you. School districts across the country that pride themselves on progressive education strategies have begun using yoga or mindfulness in PE classes, breaks between lessons, or as a form of correction for difficult students. What should Northeast ISD's policy be regarding the teaching of yoga and mindfulness? And do you think it is important for NEISD to have a policy regarding this issue?
Steve, District 6, I'll go first. This is probably one of those conversations where people are going to have lots of different opinions. Ultimately, we have to do what best reflects the community values. I have concerns with some of those things when you talk about yoga and mindfulness. Once again, what do parents, and each parent has their own belief system and structures, and it's varied, I'm sure, but we need to be proactive and thoughtful. If not, we're going to end up like Austin ISD is right now with this sexual education program or sexuality education. If we aren't preemptive and we aren't smart and thoughtful and forward-looking, and being that district of innovation that they tout, that requires all of the trustees as the independent oversight, as well as the professional staffers of the district to really think through this stuff. But the key part is they have to go out to the community, the parents, and get that input so that we have good dialogue so we can make quality policies that everybody understands clearly versus just going unanimous 7-0 vote and no public input. It needs to be the whole community, not just the DEIC or the SHAC, the whole community, big discussion. That's a very interesting subject.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Quick yes, no, agree, disagree? Yoga, mindfulness.
Okay. Is this a kumbaya or what? Is this in the TEA required
No.
curriculum?
No, it is not. It's
So
supplemental
this
things that get brought to the
this
classroom.
takes away from the time in class? Is this instead of PE?
In some places, yes. Instead of PE, they might do a yoga lesson one day in different campuses across the country, and it's actually getting really strong. In other places, remember when we would play Heads Up, 7 Up between lessons? That now they'll do yoga things between lessons. and do new age type mindfulness type things. So I know we have instances where this has happened in spotty places across Northeast ISD. I don't know how deep it goes, but I know across the country it has become a very strong thing. And for people with strong religious beliefs, yoga is rooted in Hinduism, and so I'm not comfortable with that. My child doing. I would rather him do heads up, 7-up, for example. And I don't think the school, my opinion, should do that without me saying that's okay.
I took a class, I don't know if it's called yoga, but it was, I'll call it yoga. In the room that we were in was 105 degrees.
Hot yoga.
Hot yoga, okay. So it was yoga. There was no mindfulness in there. It was basically a physical workout, mainly stretching. The only sweating that I did was because of the temperature, not because of the strenuousness of the poses that we went through. It was tough. It was very good. The teacher would say namaste or something like that, but there was no mindfulness associated with that. So it disturbs me, it concerns me that we're talking New Age. New Age is a religion, and it may be like Antifa, not a well-organized religion, but it is a religion. And there's no place for organized religions or disorganized religions in K through 12.
Okay, any follow-up? Sim? Ione?
Okay. Well, after looking at this chart and the declining scores, I think they should be focused on getting back to the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and do like I did, go old school. If your kids need to stretch, let them run a lap outside. I know all the elementary schools just got really nice walking tracks. So I think they could just go running. And I think, yes, we got to get back to the basics. And so I would be opposed to that. We need to get back to the basics. No new programs. It's obviously the thing is very broken. And so thank you.
Thank you. Sim, did you have a follow-up? No. Okay. And as Mike reminded me, and something that we can all look up on our own time, but yoga is rooted in Hinduism. And if we don't want to have 10 commandments in school, then we don't need to be possibly having yoga, right? We need to just be conscious of what rights are we protecting or violating in the process of our school children going to school and being aware of that. Yes, Mike? Can we get help with the microphone? Please.
Testing 1, 2, 3 here. I think we need to teach civics, and we need to teach government. We need to teach civics. We're not teaching kids. We're not bringing kids up to be morally straight. And now we want to teach them mindfulness. I think you can do that through the regular course of study, through pedagogical learning.
Very good. Good way to summarize that. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about sex ed. Okay. In May 2016, the Board of Trustees adopted a new middle school sex ed curriculum called Draw the Line, Respect the Line by ETR Publishing, based on the recommendations of district staff. There was a significant amount of parental concern about adopting this curriculum, which the board seems to have ignored. What role should parents' opinions play in the adoption of a sex education curriculum? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Steve.
This is part of what, quite frankly, Steve Hilliard, District 6. This is part of what got me running, and I'll be very blunt about it. Parents are the primary educators of their children. And the other thing, Chapter 4 of the Texas Education Code, I've learned all this stuff with the help of my wife. Parents will be full partners with the educators in the education of our children. There was significant opposition. There still is. I'm personally opposing it right now. I'll leave it at that. People can figure out how I'm opposing it. I will say this. I don't believe it meets the law, Texas Education Code 28004, Part E. There's 5 parts. But more importantly is, I found it very interesting during this COVID-19, the board approved that curriculum and said, we will teach it. There's not a requirement to teach sex ed, but the board decides, the trustees decided. I noticed during this last 3 months, my daughter didn't receive it. She was supposed to receive it. Why wouldn't they share that material? I would like to know how many trustees or district employees have read the 498 pages I have. Do you want to know how many times the word abstinence, which is what the code says is in there? 7 times. And the first time the word is actually explained is in a teacher workbook, lesson 6 of the 8th grade year, when the teacher gets to explain the definition. The rest of it's on the back cover to make it sound good. But back to your original question, parents should have a huge say. And I think the district needs to acknowledge that it was wrong on the May 16 vote and revisit it and either get rid of it. We're short on educational minutes as it is. So why are we going to take these 6, 7, 8 lessons out of the class? That's just time that could be doing other things, part of the physical education part. But I think there's a real problem with the program, and I don't think the teacher or the parent's voice is being respected or heard. And I don't think the parent previews are giving proper and full disclosure. Quite frankly, they don't really know what there is. The teachers don't like teaching it. Kids come out of there crying, but they think mom and dad sent them. So it must be what mom and dad want them to hear. But I don't think too many people know about Tina and Marco. If I wrote that email, if I did some of these scenarios on a district computer, it wouldn't go through their filter. Or if I did my professional job, I would have a sexual harassment possible claim. Material is inappropriate. It's not age appropriate. Once again, it doesn't have to be abstinence only. That's not what the law says. But it needs to be a preponderance of in the first thing that is taught. We teach risk avoidance and everything else. Don't do drugs. Don't smoke. This is about risk reduction. Well, do what you like, but kind of draw the line where you want it. That is a parent's role and responsibility to educate and talk to their kids. They may be uncomfortable, and there's supplemental ways if you want to do it. If parents really don't want to, the school might be able to help, but they need to be subservient to the parents. Sorry, it's a little bit of a long answer, but this one issue.
Ione, did you have a comment about that?
Yes, I definitely am opposed to the sex ed curriculum that the district adopted, and to know that they did not listen to the taxpayers. I can tell you firsthand, in 2017, the fall, I went to Lee High School. I asked to view the sex ed curriculum, and I was not allowed to see it. I was allowed to, quote, see a parent preview as long as I had a district employee with me, and I was not allowed to take a picture of the outline. And I thought, and you want me to trust you with my kid? I couldn't do it if they cannot be honest. And the things that are taught in that curriculum to a 7th grader, I have a 7th grader. I can tell you it's not appropriate. That is not the school's jurisdiction to teach what they adopted. And so I vehemently oppose the sex ed curriculum that they adopted in 2016. It's not biology.
No, it is not.
Yeah. Can I add, Steve Hilliard, District 6, one other piece which is interesting. So the board voted for the curriculum. Only the board can change curriculum. So my next question would be, who decided this year not to send those packets home via email? Because the board did not vote on it. I've watched the board meetings the last couple of months. So just a district employee has made that decision. And I think this is a question the current trustees, I would love for any of them to ask the superintendent and the staff to go, which employee made the decision not to send that home to all the 7th and 8th graders in the high school big decisions?
Yep.
Because they have now not done curriculum. It's only the trustees, and there's been no vote on that. So somebody is now taking trustee authority at the staff level, and they're subordinate to them. That's a trustee only to change curriculum. So they chose the curriculum. should have been taught. I don't want it taught. I find it as a blessing in disguise that this COVID-19, it's one of the few silver linings is all of our middle school kids didn't get this stuff put in their head, and the high schoolers for that matter. But that's a great question that I would love for the district to answer.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we had current board members here that might help us understand how that process might have happened, but of course we don't. I will tell you, if you go to Northeast ISD's website and you go to the human sexuality section under health, you will actually find a disclaimer where they have actually stated that they are not offering human sexuality at the middle school or the high school levels during distance learning because it's too sensitive of a topic to be taught at home. Exactly, because parents will see it would be the writing between the lines.
Because that's curriculum.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Didn't approve that change in curriculum.
Yeah, and it's for both draw the line, respect the line, and big decisions. Simran.
Yeah, so parents should be full partners with the in the education of their children. This is one of the statements that the PTA has. It's one of their goals. And it's common sense, right? Parents should be partners, full partners in the education of their children. If the sex ed curriculum is too sensitive to send home, or it's not essential enough to include in distance learning, it does beg the question, why not? And the institution or the adoption of the curriculum in the first place was not made with the full participation of parents. I went to a presentation on the curriculum. I learned about Tina and Marco and some other parts of the curriculum. And I came home and I saw my daughter, two-year-old, innocent, sweet daughter. And I thought, I don't ever want her to be introduced to the ideas and topics that they're teaching in school concerning sex ed.
And so now you're running for school board.
And every parent and every person that I have shared some of these ideas with are shocked. It's shocking, it's disturbing, it's not age appropriate, and it's not essential. And so if you go to my website, Why Am I Running? I agree with Mike and Ione that we need to return to basics, preparing our children for the world of work and citizenship. And if we've got to, I do understand that we're going to have some budget cuts, less revenue coming in, mainly because of COVID. Perhaps we should focus on the essential curriculum and leave off this non-essential, too sensitive to share during distance learning curriculum.
Very good. Mike, did you have a follow-up on that?
Yes. I went to a meeting. I heard they were considering this changing the sex ed program back in 2016. I went to a meeting out in the swim center area there at Blossom. And they had tables set up with materials and whatnot, and we got in there. But then for some reason or other, they decided they weren't going to give a presentation. And the materials that they laid out, they wouldn't let us take with them. And so we didn't get to see what they were proposing. They wouldn't answer any questions. Then the board adopts it. We ask Superintendent Gotardi, are you aware what's in the curriculum? He says, no, I don't know. That was up to staff. So the superintendent didn't know what was in there, yet his staff made a presentation to recommend it to the board. The board, I guarantee, didn't have a clue of what was in there. They were rubber stamping what the staff was presenting to them. How that turned about was Ron Nuremberg, the mayor of San Antonio. He got his Planned Parenthood medical director to work with the Northeast School District staff to get them to replace their existing proven abstinence-based sexual ed program for this Planned Parenthood generated program. They say it's not Planned Parenthood. It's a company that is a bastard child of Planned Parenthood and that is going around the country in order to get feeder schools for their abortuaries. They have the program that Northeast is using. They make a point of pointing out that one chapter in that curriculum is not being used. Well, the reason that that one chapter is not being used is because it's like an X-rated movie. And so they said, well, no, that's kind of touchy. These people, this isn't Austin. This isn't San Francisco. These people still have some respectable morals. And so we're going to work on their children. And maybe eventually we'll be able to include those chapters that were left out.
Can I add a quick supplement to that? It's a great
Yes,
point.
Steve.
The publisher, ETR, is from San Francisco. The board, with Santa Cruz, sorry, thank you, Santa Cruz. The board was told earlier this year, there was documents from California that the founders of ETR have direct ties to Planned Parenthood. So there's no excuse not to know about. The current board knows that. They were presented at a public meeting. You can go watch the video. And it was asked that one of the trustees put it on the next agenda to bring up a review of this stuff. They have chosen not to do that. I don't know why they did not choose to do that, but I think it's very clear. We are San Antonio, Texas. Our Northeast values, I would offer, our parental involvement would not buy off on this draw the line, respect the line curriculum. It is extremely concerning when you actually read it. When I went through and read it, I was truly concerned having daughters. And for the sons that may marry my daughters for that matter, if that is, happens. So anyways, very concerning. Thanks for that answer, Mike. That was great.
Okay, excellent. And for those of you, I guess, watching or here, if you do go to NEISD, voteforchange.com, there are 2 sex ed videos, 20 minutes apiece. I would highly encourage you watch them. Okay, so also related to sex ed, Austin ISD has been in the news a lot this spring because of their decision to adopt a very aggressive, comprehensive sex ed curriculum. There are many possible concerns about this new curriculum, but one of them is that it teaches that there are multiple genders, not just male and female, and that students can select their gender. If the NEISD staff presented the Board of Trustees with a similar curriculum, how would you, as a board member, respond? And I would like all 4 of you to answer, please. The last sentence is, if NEISD staff presented the Board of Trustees with a similar curriculum that said that gender was more than just male and female and that you could choose your gender, how would you as a board member respond? And Ione is ready to go.
Get out of here. You're fired. No, seriously. Mike brought up this quote earlier. It's one of my favorite by Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And that is what has happened in our country. The communists said that it only takes one generation to take over our country. And how are they doing it? They're corrupting our school system. This is a falsehood. I would tell them, get out. That's a lie. No.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Mike?
Is this part of yoga?
No, I don't.
It's the same thing.
Okay, Steve.
Like each thing brought before the board, you need to get the full information. You need to get the community input. I have my personal opinions. There's very obvious things out there, but each time you have to give full consideration and listen thoughtfully. There's going to be various viewpoints on that. I know my personal position is, I'll save that for another time. If I were elected and this comes before the board, I will ensure that we are very clear the position from which I'm operating.
Okay. Sim?
Yeah. How can we decide issues? It goes back to the very first question I think you asked me. How can we decide issues and questions with different viewpoints and still be civil and not conflicting about it. Well, maybe civil. This one you might be conflicting about. Yeah, hear the issue, find out the facts. What is the truth going on? What does the science say? What do our parents say? Is it essential to learn about in the schools? I think if you really put out the facts and the truth, that this issue would be declined, or at least if I was on it, I would vote to decline that or reject that, that presentation. I would hear about it, let the staff do their presentation, but if it's called as a question to vote on, I'd say no.
Okay, very good. Thank you guys very much. I know that was a tough question and maybe not something you anticipated. So the last question, because I know we need to wrap it up, but we could literally go for hours, I think. You guys are doing great. Okay, so a quick look at each school's performance in NEISD. You will see another pattern, which I did not bring a chart for, but I will explain to you. The schools with a higher percentage of economically disadvantaged students are scoring well below the state average in almost all subjects in almost all situations. How, as a board member, would you advocate for these children? And if all of you would like to answer that, that would be great. Steve?
First thing we have to do is identify and publicly acknowledge if there are problems. We have to take ownership of it. It can't always be the rah-rah. The district does a lot of great things. At the same time is, how do you improve that continuous process improvement that Mike was talking about? Is we have to not only know what we're doing well, but what are we doing poorly? How do you follow up though? That's the second part. Is we need best practices both in the district. How are our top performing schools doing? Can we take some of their approaches and apply it to the schools that are not performing, or whatever the area might be? How can the trustees though, right? We're at the high level. We don't have that. So I would do monthly reporting. And this I think should happen right now. I already see in other districts. You need a financial report. You need a discipline report and grievance reports. Those are lead indicators. Then I would get a quarterly report, because turning things around takes more than a month at a time. So quarterly reports on these underperforming schools that are having these issues. We need to figure out, just like the body, when you have a wound, you put your resources there to heal it, make the whole better, the whole district better. So we need to acknowledge that we have a problem. First, we have to identify it. Then we have to acknowledge it publicly. The parents need to know that their kid's in a disadvantaged situation. So how do we solve that problem, and what are the causal factors? But we need to look at it, work at it, and then we have to follow through. The board needs to have that informed conversation though, and it needs to be transparent that, hey, while Northeast is great, we have some problem areas, but we're going after it. And then we get the monthly updates if we were any of us to be elected as trustees, so that we can monitor that progress, that they're actually solving stuff and making it better for the economically disadvantaged kids, and giving every kid the best chance at the best education.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
So Steve addressed how the district can improve from within the schools that are traditional public schools. I would like to see the school board perhaps encourage choice, school choice, charter schools, private schools, options. Right now, the board's official legislative policy is to oppose the expansion of charter schools and school vouchers. And if there are failing schools in our district, and it's been that way for a long time, and what we do in-house is going to take some time to correct, we need to give those children an immediate out, an immediate option to get a better education. I don't care where it is. It's the parents' choice to give their children the best opportunity. And so I'll tell you again, you know, my mom and her 3 sisters and my grandmother, they all picked cotton and fruit in the valleys of Texas. And college was not an option for my mother, but she did good in elementary and high school. And she made darn well sure that for her 7 boys, we would each get the best education she could get. And we'd all get to go to college if we wanted. It meant for her sending us to Catholic schools. And it was a struggle to send 7 kids to a Catholic school. It's probably not that affordable anymore. But for those who it's not affordable to, like the low-income students, families in your question, vouchers is an option, charters is an option, and the school board and the PTA and the teachers union should be more interested in what's best for those students immediately than anything else. And I keep hearing where the PTA is quoted, we're about educating all children and advancing opportunity for all children. But that's not happening if the official policy is to oppose choice for some children. So that's a start.
I think both Steve and Sim had some great points there, and it was shocking when I learned about failing elementary schools. Just getting back to the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, and I was shocked to learn that during this shutdown that the district voted to pay the substitute teachers as, quote, an act of goodwill, close to $1 million. They just like, it's free money, let's give it out. If the district has that much money, they're taking too much away from the kids. Those substitute teachers were eligible to file for unemployment. The district is not a benevolence organization. The charge of the district is to educate the students, not indoctrinate them, not to give money away, not to have big buildings. We need to educate the students and get back to the basics.
One of the failing schools is Harmony Hills Elementary. My brother, sister, nephew live in that district. It's right across, it's where I go to church. It's right down the street from Churchill High School. 100% of the students in Harmony Hills Elementary in that neighborhood go to Eisenhower Middle School, which is right across Blanco from them. And 100% of those students at Eisenhower go to Churchill High School. Now, what happens when students from Harmony Hills, a failing high school, go to Eisenhower Middle School and then to Churchill High School? Maybe we can just change the name of Churchill. Will that fix it? No. And having a marketing program that says go public, that we're wasting taxpayers' money on in order to try and correct a problem, improve the problem, because people are looking for the exits in order to go to charter schools, is not the answer. You don't market a failing product. You can't market a failing product. You can't fool Mother Nature and you can't fool parents. So charter schools, the union, the teachers union, I met with them, filled out a survey, detailed, met with them. The only question that they had of me was, what do you think about charter schools? And I said, well, charter schools are a symptom. You're having an infection. You're having a COVID virus, a corona novella. You know what novellas are? They're Mexican soap operas. What we have is a corona's novella in Northeast. And the teachers union, their only concern is charter schools. And I said, well, it's just a symptom. You have to correct, you have to treat the disease. You can't just give it, you just can't put a Band-Aid on it. The union is deathly afraid, this is what they stated, they're deathly afraid that the Texas Education Agency wants to shut down all independent school districts in the state. Now, I don't know whether that's TEA's objective, but your chart that showed that Northeast is converging on the state average, if the state average isn't improving, and if bite your tongue, it's actually degrading, decreasing, then we're in a mell of a hess. And so, we need to get in there. We need people to come in and not have nice, pretty Facebook pages, and pretty pictures. Those are really neat. The ones that are done by the teachers are fantastic. We've got teachers out there, but the teachers tell me they're not able to teach. They're doing paperwork. I talked to a teacher that's been teaching for 30 years, and she's looking to quit because she can't teach. Too much of her time is spent on paperwork. So we need to support our teachers. We need to go in there and not say, how come you're not doing bad? We need to go in there and say, what can I do to help?
Very good. Thank you. So real quick, I'm just going to close it out and turn it over to Mike. When I say your name, please raise your hand so they can see you. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here, being honest and forthright with your answers. And I think that Northeast ISD is in for some wonderful years ahead when you guys get on the board, because this type of intercourse is what we need amongst the community to decide what is best for our children. And no, sorry. Dialogue. I was hoping that I could just go right past that mistake, Mike. Thanks. But anyway, I hope everybody watching and everybody here today is in agreement that this would be a significant change, yet a significant improvement for our children in Northeast ISD. And so I want everybody to recognize Mike Osborne for District 1. Ione McGinty for District 3. And Cimarron Gilson for District 5. And Robert Steve Hilliard for District 6.
Can we say a quick thank you to Melissa Becker for moderating this?
Thank you. Melissa has done a lot in this area over the years. Thank you, Jack. I said Melissa has done a lot over the years in this area. So there you have the Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustee candidate forum or panel. Again, I must apologize to all of the incumbents because for whatever reason, the incumbents did not show up because they were busy or whatever the case might be. But you know what I heard is here is the rectitude of intention. That's what it is, the rectitude of intention. What is the rectitude of intention? The rectitude of intention is the child, truly delivering the best education for that child. And that's what seems to be missing on some of the discussions. So our objective here today was to have all the candidates including the incumbents, like I said, that didn't show up, but to give you an idea of some of the things that need to take place when it comes to the Northeast Independent School District. So it probably goes without saying that the true leaders or the trustees, and they need to set aside certain things like their personal ambitions for the benefit of the children within the school district. A true leader, a trustee, is not beholding to the selfish ambitions or the good old boy network like it appears that, some of the old school have been there 20 years, some of the incumbents, if I'm not mistaken. It's not just Northeast Independent School District, it's just independent school districts in general. But rather work with the trustees and truly be cognizant of their deep intention and their deep rectitude of intention, that is to take care of that child. The need for the trustee to be committed to the children, the parents, and the teachers. First, for that long-term domestic prosperity, because that's what we're all after. The need for the trustee to safeguard that public morality and to promote that prosperity. Trustees that desire the justice for all with equal benefits, like Sim articulated here, and that is that immediate need for education right now, even if it means with a charter school or what? Homeschool, whatever the case might be, that immediate need for that child. The trustees need to fight and uphold the rights of others. Some of those others are forgotten so often, and trustees need to allow themselves not to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor, like so many independent school districts are these days. In summary, trustees of school districts need to be responsive, be deliberate, timely, truthful, and judicious at all times. Now that we have a good idea of the candidates here tonight, it's all worthless if we don't get out and vote for them November 3rd, 2020. November 3rd, the general election, is an incredibly important election. And you heard me earlier, I think Ione mentioned it, and that is Edmund Burke. He's a great statesman, an Englishman. He's actually an Irishman, by the way, if you didn't know that. He's a Catholic. Anyway, he said over a century ago that all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And apathetic people sitting on their couches watching TV and not getting out and vote is the definition, the true definition of doing nothing, except for sitting at home and complaining about it and not doing anything to fix it. So remember, my opening comments are on the 4 boxes. The first one is to keep America free. The first one is the jury box. Remember how important that's the judicial, right? That's the Lady Liberty, blind Lady Liberty. Jury box. The second is the cartridge box. That's the Second Amendment, right? To make certain that enemies, foreign and domestic, right? The second is the soapbox. You just witnessed the soapbox. The soapbox, if you don't know what that is, that's where politicians in the past would get up on the they literally take a soapbox, get out there and step on it, and everyone could see them. And that is giving their candidate speeches. The last one is, of course, the ballot box. And that's the point, is the whole idea behind this, and the San Antonio Family Association and Melissa and everything we've done here tonight to bring you these top-notch candidates is to get you out and to vote for these individuals or individuals that best fit the trustees. So God bless America and God bless the state of Texas. And now I ask Patrick Von Dolen to come up and lead us in our final prayer. Patrick?
Thank you, Michael. And on behalf of the San Antonio Family Association, I want to thank you all for watching live and for being here present. And I want to thank also Burnwood 68 Barbecue Restaurant on Redland Road, right adjacent to. So you want to have some fabulous barbecue, and this is the only restaurant I know that can match another barbecue restaurant's cream corn. They have excellent sides, cream corn and otherwise. But right next, adjacent to La Hacienda de los Barrios on Redland Road, just outside of Loop 1604, you can find Burnwood. It used to be called The Pod. It's got orange and blue railroad cars is what it's made out of. And they've been very accommodating and great friends to begin with. As a matter of fact, one of the owners, the husband of the ownership couple is a friend of, from Charco, which is just 11 miles from my hometown of Goliad, Texas. Remember, they all remember Goliad. So with that, I want to thank Melissa Beckett again. Northeast, NEISD, voteforchange.com, NEISD, voteforchange.com. You can find out more information about the election and everything, as well as at SanAntonioFamilyAssociation.com and San Antonio Family Association on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, SAFA Family on Twitter, SAFA Family on Twitter. So follow us, like us, support us where you can, pray for us for sure, and if you can donate to help us keep you informed, that would be fantastic. So let us pray. Mike mentioned some of these key phrases in his comments, and we're going to use them in prayer now. And a prayer for our country, our state, our county, and our city, and everybody would join with me on the paper that we've shared with you, so we can pray in uniformity and with intention. God our Father, giver of life, we entrust the United States of America, the state of Texas, Bexar County, and the city of St. Anthony to your loving care. You are the rock on which this nation was founded. You alone are the true source of our cherished rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Reclaim this land for your glory and dwell among your people. Send your Spirit to touch the hearts of our nation's leaders with an intense desire to fulfill their responsibilities that protects individuals, marriages, families, and long-term domestic prosperity. Open our public officials' minds and all people who live in America to the inestimable worth of human life, to the responsibilities that accompany human freedom. Remind your people that true happiness is rooted in seeking and doing your will. Through the intercession of your Holy Spirit, grant us the courage to reject the culture of death, indifference, communism and socialism, egalitarianism, environmentalism, and totalitarianism, and bless us with the desire, strength, and fortitude to be courageous conduits to help bring about a new culture of life, freedom, responsibility, marriage, and family. We ask for your divine assistance to help us be and remain faithful to you, and for our collective petitions through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for following the San Antonio Family Association on Facebook, San Antonio Family Association on Instagram, and SAFA Family on Twitter. And on the website, you can actually agree to not only receive text messages from us, but also emails from us. So when there's an emergency in the city of St. Anthony, that you can respond and be a part of it. One of the things we have up right now on the website and Facebook is a petition, 2 petitions actually, a third coming tomorrow. So the first one is a freedom of speech petition that is up there in response to the city of San Antonio, the mayor and city council voting to claim that any calling of COVID-19 coronavirus as a Chinese virus or China virus or Kung Fu virus is racist. And we vehemently oppose restriction of free speech. And that's what that petition's about. The second one that just came up in the last few days is a preserve Texas history, preserve history in our heritage to save the Christopher Columbus statue and preserve Columbus Park name. And you can find that one as well. The third one that is coming up tomorrow is one that would be a petition going to the State Board of Education. A lot of what the candidates here talked about this evening and what Melissa Beck was asking about is sex education curriculum is going to be taken up under the TEKS, T-E-K-S, State Board of Education review. It's the first time in 20 years that will be reviewed, and that meeting comes up next week. So if you're able to join us and go into the State Board of Education to speak, you'll have 3 minutes to do that in Austin, Texas. It might be, depending on what happens with the COVID-19 Chinese virus, coronavirus, depending on what happens with that in the outbreak of that, again, the heightened part of that it could be by video. You might have to send in a statement. We'll have to see what happens. Watch San Antonio Family Association, and we'll give you that information. But that petition is geared to tell the State Board of Education that our children are worth protecting. Children are worth protecting their innocence for the good of them as individuals, for the common good, for our long-term domestic prosperity. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I want to thank the San Antonio Family Association volunteers. Jordan Perch, raise your hand. You didn't show your face, Jordan, behind the scene. And Dina Cortez over on the side. Thank you, Dina. And my daughter, Blaine Von Dolan. And Jack Finger. Thank you very much, Jack, for your help. And Melissa Beckett. And Michael Knuffy and myself, on behalf of the San Antonio Family Association, myself, Patrick Von Dolan. Thank you very much. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless Texas. May God bless San Antonio. May God bless you during this time, this election season. Don't sit it out. Be active. Take a friend with you to vote and participate in the election process. Thank you, Michael Osborne. July 14th is the runoff election. November 3rd is the statewide is the general election. Early voting for the primary runoff starts this coming Monday in preparation for July 14th runoff election. Please get out and vote. Thank you very much.